Oilers are forced into an impossible decision. Stuart Skinner or Calvin Pickard. Game 5 seems to hang in the balance, and Edmonton Oilers fans are losing it. After what happened last game, this choice could decide the cup, and no one can agree on what should happen next. Hello everyone, welcome back to Oilers Digest. My name is Nikash Ganguli. Hope everyone is having an amazing day, an amazing time when you guys are watching this. The Oilers are coming off an exciting Stanley Cup win, and one of the most exciting Stanley Cup Finals we've had in a long time. Maybe since 2013, maybe since last year, whatever you think. But there is a very, very tough decision from Kris Knoblauch and co. about who the Edmonton Oilers starting goalie should be going into next game. But before we dive into that decision and who I think should start and maybe who you guys think should start, make sure you guys do, of course, subscribe to the channel. We are at currently 80% of viewers are not subscribed. We're getting closer to 3,500 subscribers, trying to push that number up during the Stanley Cup Finals. So, of course, if you guys do want all the Edmonton Oilers news in the most digestible fashion possible, subscribe to Oilers Digest, leave a like on the video and all that good stuff. But without any more dilly-dallying, let's get right into the juice of the video. So, obviously, the most important thing coming out of last game was the Edmonton Oilers having a huge comeback win over the Florida Panthers to tie this series at 2. They were down 3-0. Everyone thought they were out, but as we know, the Edmonton Oilers, you can never count them out, with superstars like Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and everyone chipping in, even Vasily Podkolzin and Darnell Nurse getting a couple goals in there. They do win the game, and I believe I read a stat that said this is the first time a team has come back in a manner like this in the Cup Finals since like 1919. That was over 100 years ago, 106 years ago actually. So an historic comeback. It seems like the Oilers have been doing that all playoffs, and that continues as we move back to Edmonton for Game 5. Now, an important aspect about this goaltending matchup was, of course, Stuart Skinner. So, going into Game 4 yesterday, there was a stat posted by Bouchard Report. Stuart Skinner, Game 4, as you can see right there, 6-0, 1.26 goals against average, .955 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. And obviously, this would instill some confidence into Oilers fans. You know, he has a career playoff riser, especially in games 4 to 7, games 1, 2, and 3. We'll get more into that later. But Stuart Skinner was supposed to come in and play really well for them. But the Oilers, unfortunately, they did take a lot of penalties and forced Stuart Skinner to play a lot on the penalty kill. And as we know, your goalie has to be your best penalty killer. And while there is not all the blame to be placed on Skinner, unfortunately, he did have to get pulled coming out of, I believe it was the second period. And Calvin Pickard went in. So these stats, while they were important, they ended up not mattering at the end of the day. I think we did see this graphic on Hockey Images preceding catastrophic events or whatever you want to call it. So, but if we do dive into the stats here, Stuart Skinner, .824 save percentage. I think it was one period played, and he had 3 goals against average and 14 saves. So, unfortunately, not the best night for Stuart Skinner, but he has been very up and down in the playoffs. He was like that last year. And Calvin Pickard came in, and he only led 1 goal, which was, you know, the game-tying goal at the very end of the third from Sam Reinhart. So he played very, very well. I think something to be discussed is, you know, is this Stuart Skinner's fault? Because there's been a lot of talk. I saw it in the intermission panels that, you know, Stuart Skinner wasn't 100% to blame. I saw after the game, Kelly Rudy and Kevin Bieksa were talking on the post-game intermission panel about, you know, he didn't really play that bad. It was the Oilers who need to be way more disciplined. They've taken a lot of stick penalties. Evander Kane notably keeps taking minor penalties and stick infractions. They've just been in the box way too much, and while the Oilers are supposed to have a decent penalty kill, you know, at some point the power play is going to score. Matthew Tkachuk got it done twice. It's just at some point you have to ask, how much can the goalie really do when they're constantly playing down a man? And maybe that is a story about Stuart Skinner going into the next game. And an important thing about switching over to Calvin Pickard is he does join a short list of goalies who have came in relief and won a Stanley Cup final game. Notably joining Andrei Vasilevsky back then when he was the backup to Ben Bishop during that Stanley Cup Finals run against the Chicago Blackhawks in 2015. So Calvin Pickard joining that list among some other goalies that I am not too familiar with because they are before my time, of course. So Calvin Pickard, I think, maybe the unsung hero of the Oilers season here. He is, you know, just came in and gave them the good minutes when they needed. Maybe the Oilers seem to trust him more. Who knows? But Stuart Skinner, it's just such a convoluted decision about who should start Game 5 because we know Stuart Skinner has been great in games 4 to 7. throughout the playoffs. Even last year, he was very good coming into those, elimination, do or die, high octane games. As we know, every game is important in the playoffs, but those games 4, 5, 6, and 7, those are where it really matters. Stuart Skinner has seemed to play well, but in hockey, we always know it is, what have you done for me lately? And Calvin Pickard, he's done a lot for the Oilers lately in helping them get that win. So let's dig into Calvin Pickard's playoff stats as we try to decide more and more who should start Game 5 for the Edmonton Oilers here. So Calvin Pickard throughout this playoff run has been pretty solid. He did have that injury in the Vegas Golden Knights series in the second round, but it's interesting when you look at his save percentage. Only 2 games above 900, and he hasn't lost. I didn't have the stat for yesterday's game, which I believe he would have been credited with the win, of course. But everything in there aside from that game he came in for relief for Stuart Skinner way back in April. It feels like the playoffs have been going on for a long time, guys. It's almost been 2 months. But he hasn't lost yet. And if you look at the save percentage numbers, 875, 882, 852, the 955, 927, 857. But if you're an Oilers fan, do you really care? Because they're winning, and it seems like he is giving the saves when they are needed. Even in the overtime win against Edmonton, where he won, he played 75 minutes in that game. 875 got the win. 82 got the win. All that matters in the playoffs is winning, and I think it's important. As I say, it doesn't matter how, it matters how many. And Stuart Skinner, and Calvin Pickard, he is not getting the save percentage, maybe the stats that look pretty on the stat sheet. But you know what is the only side that matters in the playoffs? The W, and that is exactly what Calvin Pickard has done all playoffs. He has not lost yet. Now, if we look at Stuart Skinner a little bit, it's been kind of all over the place. And there was a long time where he would either get scored by like 4 goals or get a shutout. So it's been kind of wishy-washy for him. Obviously, he has more losses than Calvin Pickard. Calvin Pickard hasn't lost yet, as I said. And it all comes down to who Kris Knoblauch thinks can get it done when the going gets tough, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals. Stuart Skinner has the track record in the Cup Finals of playing good late in the games. We have more stats for that later, and I think it's important to look at that, of course. But at the end of the day, as I said, at hockey, you need to ride the hot hand, and Calvin Pickard, that is exactly what he is. Even if we try to dive into the advanced stats here, if we look over here, they're pretty similar, to be honest. Goal save above expected is the one we're going to be looking at. They're -0.1 and 0.1. There's really no difference between the two. They have been very similar goalies in terms of the advanced metrics. And for those that might not know what goal save above expected is, it kind of looks at where the shots are coming from and how likely a goalie is to save them, and then kind of estimates, should they have saved it? Were they likely to save it, and were they not? And Calvin Pickard and Stuart Skinner, it seems, based on these stats, they have just been doing their job. They're not being overly great. They're not being super bad. It kind of evens out when you look at all the numbers. So, again, it's a super interesting case to look at. They're similar in only 5 difference in games played, obviously, because Calvin Pickard was dealing with that injury. And the question remains, if Calvin Pickard doesn't get injured, does Stuart Skinner ever get the net back? That is another huge question going into who should play Game 5 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. And I think one thing that is kind of make me swing towards Stuart Skinner is the proven track record. If we look at his stats in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year, once you get past the first 3 games where they lost, 970, 906, 952, 905, all insane numbers from Stuart Skinner. Now, unfortunately, the Edmonton Oilers were not able to win that Game 7 and win the Stanley Cup, but Stuart Skinner, he did his part. Look, he had 1 goal against, and then he had 3 goals against, and then 1 goal against, and then only 2 goals against in the Stanley Cup Final clinching game for the Panthers. I think Stuart Skinner, you got to go with track record in the playoffs. Maybe just a bad game on the penalty kill. If the Oilers can prove to be more disciplined, I think Stuart Skinner looks better in that game. And I think people who really watched and paid attention to the game yesterday are going to really see that the penalty kill didn't do Stuart Skinner any favors, and the Oilers didn't do Stuart Skinner any favors by taking all those penalties. But at the end of the day, the Oilers won the game. So maybe you do go with Pickard for that matter. Personally, I would go with Stuart Skinner. I think you gotta ride the goalie who's been number 1 all year. He's been your guy, and I think you gotta win with him. And if you put him in, you be happy with the result because you're riding with your starting goaltender from my point of view. And the main reason this video is happening is because we don't know who's starting tomorrow because Kris Knoblauch did not announce who is starting for Game 5. If we look at it here, from Dan Nugent-Bowman, from Oilers Kris Knoblauch availability, no starting goalie named for Game 5, and obviously Troy Tesher was benched because that giveaway. But no starting goalie for Game 5. Does just lead to more questions. So let me know in the comments, guys, who should start for tomorrow's game. We are back in Edmonton. The Oilers are at home. Get those favorable matchups. So it'll be interesting to see. Let me know in the comment section, guys. Should they start Stuart Skinner or should they start Calvin Pickard as they try to go up 3-2 in the Stanley Cup Finals and hopefully get one win closer to the Stanley Cup? So with that being said, guys, hope everyone had a great day. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And, of course, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.